Welcome back to the Dynasty Pulse, where we're emotionally prepared to move up a player's 6 spots because he added 2 pounds of good weight. The Combine, 2 weeks away, which means stopwatch season is here, and Rational Thought is officially on the injury report. And we brought in Pete Nova to supervise the chaos. So let's get this party started. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Dynasty Pulse. We got the crew here, minus one Biggs, but he's on assignment doing Biggs things, and we got a killer show today. We got a special guest here, Pete Nova, fantasy analyst from PlayerProfiler, one of the sharpest, most roundest minds in the Dynasty space. He's widely known for his elite DST streamer series, 94% percentile success rate in 2024. Kudos to you, Pete. And today we're going to lean on his Dynasty perspective as we break down player outlooks, trade strategy, and we're going to be talking Combine. So let's bring our special guest in, Schultzy. Let's go.
Friends call me Nova, as in Casanova.
What is going on, Pete? Welcome to the Dynasty Pulse. Tell everybody what's going on and where they can find all your work.
Well, number one, I appreciate you having me on. I do gotta ask, who put the intro video together? Is that Schultzy that does those, or is that you, Mike?
That was Mike on that one, all Mike.
Okay, because Chev and Jeremiah, they always try to get pointers from me of like, hey, how does this thumbnail look? I'm gonna have to try to get some pointers on some of these intro videos because that was top notch. So, but I appreciate you having me on. Super excited to be here. It's that time of the year where we're trying to not go insane by looking at so much information, so much data so quickly, because we still have a lot of hurdles. We have pro days, we have the Combine. So excited to get the Combine almost over with, not because I don't enjoy it, but just so that we can get more and new data and see how the Dynasty landscape kind of reacts to it.
That's awesome, man. Well, what do you got going on right now? You got a lot of things on the go. We see your face everywhere. You're doing some fast draft stuff, some player profiler. Tell everybody what our viewers, what we got on the slate right now.
Yeah, so I'm doing a weekly show, the Dynasty Stock Market. I bring on a guest every single week. I know you'll be on that show soon. And we just like to evaluate kind of what the market is, where they're valuing players, and if we're buying and selling, based on where the market has them valued. So that's been a fun show, trying to think outside the box, be creative there. Then I'm spearheading a lot of the content on the Fast Draft YouTube channel. So got a really nice platform there for best ball drafts. Honestly, it's been really fun doing the origins just because you're drafting with people that have skin in the game, which has been a lot of fun. It's good to do the mock drafts, but people that actually have their nuts on the table a little bit with a little bit of money. Don't know if I could say that, but I took the chance there. So it's been a lot of fun. So I've been doing that. And then honestly, I really, really have tried to go a little bit deeper this offseason. So I'm working on sharpening my skills when it comes to evaluating the tape on players. So have really, really been leaning into that. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's been a little bit challenging at times, but I like to embrace the unknown a little bit and lean into the uncomfortable things. So it's been a lot of fun. I got a lot coming up. So excited about it.
I love that. I'm on the same boat. I'm trying to get myself into more tape as well. I'm more of the analytics side, and now hanging out with Chev and Coach a lot more. They're more of the tape side of things, so it's bringing a lot more a well-rounded aspect to my analysis. So yeah, I'm right there with you there, Pete. And before we get into the probing section, I haven't said hi to the other guys, so let's go around the table. Schultzy, what's going on, man? How are you doing tonight?
Hey, fantastic. Dude, Combine is here already. Like, what the crap? Like, I don't know, man. That's wild. I can't believe it's Combine time already.
No kidding. All right, Coach, what's going on with you, buddy?
Hey, man, it's free to pay attention, and I think having a guy like Pete on the show is just phenomenal for us. And hey, man, any time on this side of the dirt, any day is a good one, brother.
Love it. Chev, what's up, man?
Hey guys, real excited to be here tonight. Really looking forward to talking to Pete about what we're going to talk about with the Combine. I'm really excited about it.
All right, he was in fast motion there. He had his balls in a vice, and now we're heading into probing some Pete here. So maybe after we're done with him, his voice is going to be up a couple notches after the probing here. So let's talk Combine, Pete. 2 weeks away, offensive skill players set to stage here. We're putting you on the hot seat. We're putting you on the probe, and we got some questions for you. So, Schultzy, let's start the probing.
Pete, welcome to the probing. Every year at the Combine, we get a lot of big time board movement, right? Like a lot of prospect opinions and evaluations changing just based on some working out here. But so I guess based on that, I want to know for you, would you rather draft a guy who has like really awesome film and traits that like you really can get behind and stand by, but maybe he went out at the Combine and didn't put up numbers that maybe you wanted? Or would you rather have the guy who doesn't necessarily pop on the film and doesn't carry some of the traits you like to see in a player, but shows up at the Combine and absolutely lights it up, and, just gets that like freak athlete tag to his name?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we see it happen every year. You got the John Ross who runs the really fast 40. You have the Shamar Stewart who gets drafted, freak physical specimen, but doesn't have the college production to back it up as a pass rusher in a first round grade. And so to me, for me personally, I think locking in the profile on a player is the most important thing first. And then the Combine, the draft capital, where you value them comes next. So the tape is always going to come first for me. I think it's important to gather a strong conviction on a player and try not to be swayed on it. If I see something about a player on tape and I say, hey, I'll give you an example. A guy can go in a squat rack and, put up his max, and I tell him, put up your max and put your toes together. Right. Or, and you might say, well, that's bad form, but I'm never going to be able to get the weight up because of that. Right. That's an example to me of a guy who, look, most guys are not going to be able to do physical things unless they're in a perfect situation. And that's what the Combine normally is for these players, right? It's perfect environments where they're able to move fast. And so I don't care if a guy can get fast. Can he play fast, right? And so that's what you're going to see more on tape. And that kind of comes out like a guy like Casey Conception, who, may not run the fastest 40 time, but, he moves really fast on the field.
Man, Pete, I love what you're saying there, because I've always thought, how often does a player get a perfect 40 where you're lining up as if you're in track? It's a snap and the ball is live and you have to adjust to the defenders and you're just going straight. How often does that happen where you get prime, perfect indoor conditions like that and there's no other stimulus on the other side in game, like you say, game-like? So I love what you're saying, because I remember years ago, I'm sitting there thinking, man, this GPS stuff, we're getting 20 miles per hour tracking and you're getting on-field speed, but maybe a guy is in the 4.6s. Well, hey, something isn't right about, shouldn't they be 4.4 if they can go 20 miles per hour plus? But you hit on a good note there. Just the perfect conditions versus reality and game-like.
Yeah, and I would say too, with players at bigger schools, if they come out and they're physically extremely gifted at the Combine, but the production doesn't match up with it, versus a player at maybe a smaller school where they're killing the combine, but the production's not as good and they played at a smaller school. I'm going to probably prefer the smaller school guy, because for me, I look at it and say, this guy didn't have probably the training. He didn't have the resources that maybe a guy at a Bama or an LSU did. And so to me, I might think there's more to untap there. Whereas with maybe a guy at a bigger school, he had a lot of those resources. He had the top coaching, and he didn't perform. And so going to the NFL with top coaching, how is that going to change? Like, we always want to wish cast, and we want to figure out, yeah, this guy could do this, but like, how does he get to that? Right. And if for a guy at a smaller school, you can kind of visualize that a little bit better, because you say, well, I can understand he didn't have as good a coaching. He didn't have the resources. Maybe he didn't have the best diet program, all those things. And so that's another way I differentiate when I look at guys at the combine, where I usually give my eyes open up a little bit bigger for guys at smaller schools at the combine versus, guys that are bigger schools and didn't have that production.
What about players? Another follow-up on that. What about players who game the event, the combine, whether it be juicing their weight a certain way to get a certain amount on the 40 or test a certain way on shuttle? Is there anything there where you're like, hey man, you're not head faking?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really, if anything, I'm giving those guys credit, right? Because they want to show up and test as best as possible. So I'm not going to knock a guy for that. But what I would say is, if I watch a guy and, he's running a 3-cone, or, his 10 by 10 split on a 40-yard dash is extremely good. But when I watch him play again, and I don't see that on film, I'm not going to put it into an account as much, because like you said, some guys just learn how to do the drills really, really well. And it can be misleading. So that's where I go back to the film and say, that's where, for me, it's most important, I think. And, it's not a knock. Look, most of us have, or all of us have day jobs where we can't grind film every single day. And so sometimes data makes that easier, right? It gives us a baseline for people. And then you say, okay, hey, all these guys are meeting this baseline. Let me look at some film on those guys first before I look at guys that fall below my baseline. And then if you have extra time, then maybe you go to those guys.
Love it. All right, Chev, you got a question for our expert here, Ben?
Yeah, I think I'll give it a go. So, listen, we've been singing the praises of one Mike Washington Jr. for quite some time. I live 20 minutes from where he played his college football. You stumbled upon his film and were really impressed, and then it's just gotten louder and louder and louder. Shout out to Fast Draft. Gotta add Mike Washington Jr. to the Orange Draft. Like, let's get that. Hey, let's get that fixed. So, with Mike Washington Jr. hitting over 21 miles an hour at 228 pounds, for those of you who are not familiar, University of Arkansas running back, 5th-year senior, dealt with a bunch of stuff. We don't have to get into his backstory, but it does kind of make everything sweeter. If Mike Washington goes out and he absolutely bombs the combine, how much does that factor into your evaluation? And I know that it's just kind of a piece of the puzzle, which is, I mean, I'm in total agreement with that being the piece of the puzzle to put together a proper evaluation of a player. But how much do you weigh that in? If, say, after hitting 21 miles an hour at the Senior Bowl, he goes out and he runs a low 4.6?
Well, the Senior Bowl, it's practice, it's with pads on, right? So I kind of go back to what I said before in that play speed, right? I mean, if this guy's playing and he's getting to a top speed with pads on, that means he moves well with pads on. There are guys that can move and run really fast, and they do not do the same with the pads on, right? It's just what it is. Whether mentally the brain just doesn't function correctly, I don't know. I wish I could tell you. If I could tell you that, I'd probably be making some serious cash. But I think with Mike Washington, he caught my eye pretty early in the process, and I said that I thought he was going to be a riser. I thought that the combine, mobile, were going to be things that were only going to boost his stock. And we're kind of seeing it. And honestly, selfishly, I would love for him to not do well at the combine because the steam and the hype train is pushing him to a point where, this is a guy that I genuinely think could become fringe 112, 201 area where he's getting close to a late first.
I'm already drafting him there. Like, honestly, he's my RB3 right now,
Yep.
and I'm gonna talk about him a little bit later, even
Yep.
more so because of that steam. The only concern I have about him is his drops. I mean, his fumbles. Like, he's got 10 fumbles. That's a big concern. Maybe NFL teams might be deterred away from him because of that. So that might be the concern I have with him. But elite speed for the size he has, complete grinder. I mean, he's got everything that I'm looking for, and I think everything that a team's going to be looking for in somebody. So he's that rapidly gotten up there. I got Emmett Johnson as my RB2, and then Mike Washington as my RB3. So this is where I stand at this stage.
Well, and I'm going to say, and this is where we get to a point in the process where we fall in love with guys, and it becomes a ROI discussion, right? What is the return on our investment? And with Mike Washington, I almost want to put him up there because I love him so much. I think I'm not firmed up on. I feel very comfortable with my 1 and 2 being, like you had mentioned, Love and Emmett Johnson. I feel pretty confident about that. Then it kind of becomes a flavor for me of Jardarian Price. I think has a real case to be running back 3. I mean, it looked extremely explosive. I think he kind of gets forgotten about because he played a second fiddle in his offense, but it wasn't like he didn't get the volume. And Mike, you almost have to be careful because it's like we live in a world where everybody wants to be the guy who discovers this player or was the highest on this player. And for me, I'm trying to, and it's hard, right? But I'm trying to get to a point where I can be rational and say, hey, I'd rather be right than first. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where I'm at. But not to say Mike Washington at 3 is wrong. I think I still need to watch more tape on Jardarian, who I haven't gotten to enough. I've watched a lot on Coleman. Chev and Jeremiah kind of know I'm kind of, I can't get a feel for him. The metrics look really good, but the tape just doesn't match it, in my opinion. So with Mike, Mike's right there. I have him at RB5 right now behind Coleman, but I almost want to have him ahead of Coleman. But it's almost like you start listening and you start hearing things and you're like, man, maybe I'm nuts. I can't have Coleman as my RB5. I mean, that sounds crazy, but it's just living in that conviction. And as we get more information, and thank goodness that the draft, and there's so much time to get there to really solidify how we feel about players. We have time to get there, and things are going to swing us emotionally. It's just a matter of just kind of deciding what is most important for you if you are going to raise a guy up or drop a guy down.
Hey, question on that. Is that where you hope, Pete, that maybe Mike Washington gets lesser draft capital than a Jonah Coleman, gets pushed back on day 3, maybe Jonah Coleman goes in day 2, and then the market cools off, and then the first right principle can come into play where you actually get a dip off of the hype train people who are just like, hey, I've got to go all the way up the ladder just to get ahead of the field. And then you can take advantage because then he's appropriately priced before all the hype took off.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And I think I typically, what I'm learning it more and more in my process is that I know people try to say talent over situation, and I understand that, but I think situation's not just always about volume and is he going to be the RB1 or who does he have around him, right? I think a lot of situation also has to do who's coaching, right? Who are the coaches? Who are the guys that are going to be in there? Is this guy going to get thrusted, into a situation where, the offensive line's not good and they could have some turnover with the coaching staff in a year or two. And then there's changes. And so that's what I like to focus on a lot. And I think with the draft capital question, right, Coleman might get better capital than Washington, and maybe that fluctuates and drops Washington down. And then again, it becomes that return on investment. If I look at a player and I say, you know what? There's some weaknesses in this guy's game, but he is extremely, extremely high upside. I might be more willing to take a chance on that guy in a class that, let's be honest, does not have a lot of ceiling players. I mean, that's just what it is right now. If you looked at these running backs in this class versus last year, I mean, outside of Love, maybe Emmett Johnson, but in a vacuum before knowing what guys did, RB2 in this year's class might be RB6 last year, right? So at that point, you start saying, all right, well, what are NFL teams thinking about these guys? And then it's like, okay, well, then maybe I need to take the more risky upside player that maybe I don't love some things in his game. And maybe I can understand why he won't stick longer because he could fall off if he doesn't get it in the NFL, but I'm more willing to take a chance. So even if a guy like Coleman gets higher capital, a guy like Washington might be that higher upside swing that you want to take a chance on. And again, the cost might drop even lower if the combine doesn't go well. And if NFL teams signal, hey, we're not as in love with Mike Washington as the fantasy guys are, kind of thing. So it's kind of like the Cam Scatterby thing. I wanted to have him higher, but I didn't know if I was crazy. I know Chev loved him, but it's like, I love him. The NFL team's going to love Cam Scatterby? I don't know. Right.
Well, there was a big Braylon Allen crowd headed into the combine, and then he dusted off after that happened, right? Similar size, similar metrics, he could catch the ball out of the backfield. So, he could be impressing in the same kind of manner and just fall off. So you mentioned that too. You got to keep your eyes open there. And in a class where, obviously without the top heavy quarterback that's pushing down all of this talent, that's why we're talking about it at this stage. It's not like the first 2 or 3 rounds that we're going to be worrying about. It's the back half of this first, like the 3rd and 4th rounds where some of this talent's going to dry up. And that's where some of these sleepers are going to be really important to hit up. And yeah, great analysis on that. I think you hit the head on there really, really well there, Pete. Now I'm gonna follow that up here with, just spotting your edges here. You've been great at doing that. Obviously, with your DST streaming success, you know how to prioritize sustainability processes over, that short-term noise that maybe that this Mike Washington is getting at this stage. So when it comes to the combine, what single metric or drill do you find most predictive for long-term dynasty success across skill positions? And conversely, which one do you see dynasty managers overreact to the most, leading to trade or draft mistakes?
Yeah, I think we could definitely start on the wide receiver. I think with the wide receiver, I'm a sucker for guys with big verticals, guys that go up and get the ball. I think at the NFL level, you're playing against a lot more physical players, and so I tend to prefer guys that can go up and show that vertical. It's not a massive metric, but it's one that me preferably, I love my big X wide receivers, and so I want to see who can go up and get it. And you can see it a lot on film. I think with running backs, running back is really the most important one when it comes to identifying and sifting out the BS from what's actually important. And I think it's really the 3-cone, and I think it's really the 40-yard dash, but it's not the 40 time. I think it's really the 10-yard split, right? What can these guys do in short bursts? Because kind of like Jeremiah had said before, very rarely are guys going to be running in a straight line, 40 yards down the field, right? So I think the other thing that I think is important with the 40, where 10-yard split or not, when you're looking at a bigger back that's running a 4.4 at 220, like a Mike Washington, it's a lot more impressive than say, let's just say Jamari Taylor, who I think is 205, 206, somewhere on there, running a 4.4. Yeah, that might not be nearly as impressive. So I think the 10-yard split, though, is definitely the most important thing for running backs. And I think people get over their skis on the 40. So conversely, same thing. The 40 people look at and they get so over their skis. Same with wide receivers. We talked about John Ross before. Similar situation. These guys, these burners where the speed doesn't translate on the field, or a guy is a one-trick pony at the wide receiver position. Can he just run straight, right? So I think those are things that are important. With quarterback, I really think I think it's really looking at how they throw the football on the out routes. I think it's most important for me. Chef's got his finger up. Do you want me to, were you going to say something?
Oh, dude, this is just how I would raise my hand in a meeting. Like if we were in like a Zoom call, so you
Okay.
just hold it up there.
All right,
You're
well,
good.
I'll say the thing with the quarterbacks to me is I always want to see them hit the out routes. And it sounds very simple and it sounds very not sexy, but I saw Zach Wilson roll out to the left, roll out to the right, and chuck the ball 70 yards downfield, and everybody was busting their loads. I mean, it's not a lot of these guys can throw the ball deep. That's not as important. Can a guy hit an out route and get it out in timing and get it out in does it get there quickly? Is the most important throw, I think, at the combine. And some people might think differently, but it's important because you want to know how quickly defenses will be able to adjust and can they jump those passes at the NFL level. And you also get to see it compared to other quarterbacks, right? I think that's how the ball comes out on an out route versus the other guys that they're standing next to, and you could start to see guys separate. So that's something I prefer. I mean, with the quarterbacks, usually it feels like the board work and the interview stuff that we don't see is really the most important thing at the combine, though.
IQ, like you're not going to be able to measure. We're not going to have access to measure people's IQ,
No.
Or their ball knowledge. We're not going to get access to that until after the draft, for proprietary reasons. Yeah, all the teams have their proprietary blends about, what they want. What they want as far as seeing like how schematically people can break down and elaborate on film. I love the point that you made about, the running backs and the 40 being completely overrated. Like some of the best running backs of all time run dog water 40s, but you get them out on the field and there's nothing that you can do with them. Arian Foster being a prime example, Frank Gore being another example. Like the 10-yard split, the 3-cone, the L drill are obviously like the agility metrics are much more important. And I would even go a step further into like their understanding of their role in, in the pass game and pass protection. Like Peyton Manning, beat that over the head with Edgerrin James and Joseph Adai and all those guys that caught passes. So I love those points. My question to you would be, how do you go about, like, I know that, it's not going to overweight the 40, but like in this class, is there someone who you are looking to confirm your priors on as for like once the combine hits? You can't say Mike Washington. Go.
Man, I want to say Jamari Taylor, but I'm kind of keeping him for another segment here. But we talked about it. I think the biggest concern I have with Taylor is a 205 guy that's a power that's really, really strong and physical. How does he match up at the next level, being that he's strong? Does he – you're not going to see that at the combine, right? And so one thing I feel like he lacks, at least on tape – I'll actually – how about this? I'll talk about Jamari Taylor in a little bit, but Adam Randall's a good one. Adam Randall's a good one. We've talked about him, converted wide receiver from Clemson to running back. And I want to see, now that he has time, that the season's been over, now that he's had a little bit of time to train and to refine some things. I don't know who he's working with, but to get ready for the combine, how does he look in the short area quickness stuff? Because that's a concern that I have for him, is, the long speed for him. That's one thing that he doesn't have. And so the 40-yard dash for long speed, at least, may be good to see for him, where I don't care normally for the 40-yard dash, but his long speed is lacking. And so I'd like to see, how he does there for the 40. But I'd also be very curious to see what he does in the 10-yard split, because this is a guy that I think doesn't have that short area quickness that
Right.
I'd like. And so I'd love to see with him settling in. He only played 1 year as a running back, a lot on his plate, for a guy that's a senior that was a captain at Clemson, filling in for Phil Maffa. How does he look, decompressing from the season, a little bit of time to kind of self-scout and maybe get with the right people to get him ready. How does he come in to the combine? So I'm very curious to see, is he going to confirm my priors where I am concerned about the long speed, or does he maybe do what Jeremiah said and trains it up so well that he masks it and we say, oh shoot, maybe he is a little faster than we thought.
Love it. That's a great answer, man. Keep cooking here, Casa, because you're doing some awesome stuff now. Let's move on to Coach's question here, and you got a two-banger here. Let's hear it.
Hey, love it. And two-factor authentication for Pete here. Every year, Pete, we have a few players. They dominate the combine. It raises their stock. Two that come to mind for me, and you love Jadarian Price. He's a player that comes to mind for me.
Sure.
Zachariah Branch, not a player that I love per se, but he's somebody that I can see making late round one, mid second round rookie picks more valuable from a perception standpoint, because I know there's a whole narrative. This class is what it is. It's not as great as the 27. Those are two players that come to mind who will test and pop and change perception. And then we may have differing opinions on their abilities in the NFL. But who are some players that you see getting a pop post NFL combine? And then what actionable advice would you give dynasty managers? Are you trading some picks away? Are you acquiring rookie picks? Is there any kind of finagle that you like to finesse that maybe it's just like a move in dynasty that you curate from getting these pops or taking advantage of market sentiment, of the psychology of your league mates?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, I was just talking about Jamar Taylor. That's really who I think could start to stand out a little bit, because I think Jamar Taylor reminds me of a guy that's just like NFL teams are going to love, right? Extremely well-rounded. And so he's a guy that I think fantasy guys won't love as much, but I think NFL teams will really, really like him. So I'm excited to see him test. I think he's going to test a little faster than people expect. And when you talk about the 40 time, I think he could run a sub 440, 4.440. So I mean, if he could do that, with how people overreact, I could absolutely see him pushing his way up into some conversations. And then if he gets good draft capital, people being excited about the combine, running, or, say really fast, which whether we talked about it, it's not as important, but people love it. That plus good draft capital, I think could really change the perception for how people maybe view him, especially people that, he's not really getting a lot of hype right now, in my opinion. And as for actionable advice for draft picks right now, I'm telling guys, there's really two things that I want to do right now. I want to trade into the top 5 if I can get there. If I can get there, that's where I want to be. I want one of these top 3 wide receivers. I'd love to get Mendoza. I'd love to get Love. Those are the top 5. I think when you start getting past the top 5, a lot of it starts to look the same, and there's just not a lot of separators. And so if I have, picks in the, unless I'm in love with KC Conception or I'm in a tight end premium and I love Sadiq, right? I get those guys. So if you feel very convicted on those players that you're going to get them, then I tell people go with your gut, keep those picks. But if you're kind of in that gray area where it's like, man, like, I don't think I'm going to get the guy I love and I'm outside the top 5, and I'm talking like maybe you're in that 108 to 112 area, I'm trying to move back. I'm trying to move back and get more bullets in my chamber. And I typically tell people, I think second round picks, I value them. We have a coach here. I have a coach at my old spot with Face Off. And coach always says that, second round picks are just almost as valuable as third round picks, right? In fantasy, the hit rate is very similar. And so I try to, get third round picks as much as I can, because it's very, very close. I mean, look at all the guys we saw pop in the third round. Harold Fannin Jr. last year. Now I'm blanking, but
Gadsden was a third round last year. There was a handful of them, and if you were just, I think, depending on where we were, like, I mean, Jalen Noel might have been in that range, but I mean, he came in a little bit later on in the year, so like some of these guys for sure, yeah.
And you look at the back end of the second round was pretty gross last year for the rookies too. There wasn't a big difference between that and the third round. So that would be my advice. I'm trying to either trade up into the top 5 unless you have conviction for like KC or Sadiq, because I do have KC as my wide receiver 4 right now. I love Denzel Boston. I just feel like he's going to be a better NFL player than he is for fantasy, and I worry about that with him.
I got another guy that I think I'd be willing to go into the middle round for, and that's Omar Cooper. I think he's steaming up quite a bit now. I love his metrics, and I'm starting to get in a lot more of his tape as well. So he's a guy that I'm picking in that range too. So I'm almost willing to go as far as 109, as far as in this draft, as some draft capital people that I'm willing to take a stake on. I'm drafting Omar over Denzel Boston. I'm drafting KC over Boston as well. So these are some guys that I'm looking at as popping.
And that's a good. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You keep going.
I was just gonna say that's a good example, though. I mean, Omar Cooper is going to be a guy that he's getting talked about a decent amount, almost more than KC, I think. And he's a guy that I have no idea where he's going to land. He could land even higher than the 109. And I think that's partially why I like to have more bullets in the chamber, where if you think like, again, I tell guys, if you're convicted and you trust your process and you feel like you evaluate guys really well, then go take the guy that you want. Don't take the guy that people tell you should take. Just take the guy that you think you should take. But I try to push back, right? Like, I love Mike Washington. You're talking about him being a potential late first. I like Denzel Boston. I wouldn't take him, the fourth wide receiver very high. But if I could move off of, let's just say KC's gone and I don't love Sadiq, it's not tight end premium, and I'm kind of iffy on Omar, I might move off of the 107 and go get the 111 and 112 if I can get that, right? And now I'm getting two chances at some players that I like, right? Maybe I get Jardarian Price, and maybe Emmett Johnson does fall, because I mean, shoot, me and Chev were in a mock draft today, and somebody thought it was insane that we would even think that he should be a first round pick. So a lot of people got a lot of crazy valuations on this class, and it just goes to show that people are having an issue right now this early, really settling them. And that's why the draft is going to be so important, because people value draft capital so much. That's going to be more of the differentiator of moving guys up and down, as we get through the process, because there's a lot of gray area right now.
Love it. Chev, you got your finger up?
I would rather die with my convictions than live with someone else's. If you got your guy and get your guy. Don't take someone because some rookie guide told you to do so, unless it's our rookie guide.
Yeah,
you can live with our convictions. Just kidding. But die with your convictions. Like Pete, same thing. We were in a group chat the other day. The guy was like, "No offense, man. I'm just gonna not listen to any fantasy content and just do my own thing." And like, that guy sucks at fantasy football. So, whatever. But like, I love the point that you made. This is really kind of a who can wait it out. It's like playing the state game with your girlfriend, and it's like, guess a state, and you move your hand up her leg a little bit more every time. It's like, who can wait it out the longest? All right. Because we just have to. This is a class that there are good players, contrary to popular belief. All right. And I'm going to shut up after this. But there are good players. You just have to know how to evaluate them, and then how the NFL views them and what their utilization plan is. And the spreadsheet sycophants, they can't explain any of this to you. So this is why it is important to know how to evaluate film, which shout out to you for taking that next step. And really getting into taking this. I'm not going to say what you're doing unless you're cool with that. Right. Yeah. Like, you're doing a scouting academy to get more into, to get more in-depth knowledge of how to break down film and stuff. And like, I feel like there's a marriage that works, but just taking a one-to-one approach and saying, like, completely ignoring the other side is nonsense. It's complete nonsense. So but all that to say, like, one, have your own convictions and be willing to live with them, instead of just saying, well, such and such told me to take this. It's a reach to take this guy here. If it's your guy, get him, because you're going to feel sick if you watch him go off on somebody else's team.
That's the big thing, right? Like, Travis Hunter's a great example. Last year, I felt like I was berated, and I felt like I was taking crazy pills because so many people were just making me feel so stupid for liking Tet McMillan more than Hunter. And I didn't even have Hunter in the top 5. I had him like 106. And I just kept feeling like people were just people thought I was crazy. And now, I mean, Hunter's like wide receiver 27 in startups right now. And before the season, he was like wide receiver 12, 13, right? Matthew Golden's a great example. I didn't love Matthew Golden. I did change my conviction on him. I liked Luther Burden. I had some concerns about the effort on his tape its last season. And I thought landing spot, I liked the idea of Matthew Golden in the landing spot, but I didn't love the tape on Golden. I didn't think he did a lot to merit, a first round pick. And that was a situation where, you let other people's opinions get the best of you. And so then you sit there and bite. I mean, I'd rather kick myself because I made a mistake than kick myself watching a guy I loved on somebody else's teams, especially if you play in a lot of leagues and he's going off. And now you gotta pay through the teeth to go get that guy, because now you're trying hard to find, man, and now you almost got to root against the guy that he doesn't do well so that you can get him low.
Coach, what do you got?
Hey, this is also sound betting advice. When you have somebody else lay a call, but you're the one laying the bet, you're the one who has to live with the results of the bet. So you really need to, at least at the very most, if you're going to outsource what you're doing with your advice, you need to wear it when it comes time to accepting the result. So the same thing is for betting. But for what you're saying, Pete, if you have conviction, you need to go with that and keep that. And you're better off riding off with that and accepting the results, good or bad, than the filtering of what somebody else might say. If you put too much weight, you just have to be adult enough, all right? Because there's females here too. It's not just men. You need to be adult enough to just wear it for the result, because you still are the one who makes the decision, despite the advice that you take. With that said, you should listen to what Pete's saying here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for years, like when I first got into it, I was worried about, staying true to my convictions and saying what I saw, because, wonder what people would say about it. And then you just kind of got to continue down your process and grow. And, these guys have helped me grow as a creator, as an analyst. I was all data before, and then, doing these rookie guides and having to watch this tape and understand and get an opinion, develop that, it only rounds you out. There's data can lead you one way and film can lead you one way. And you got to have a little bit of both in order to be very successful at what you do here. And it sounds like you're well on your way. And these guys have helped me get to that point too. So love it. All right, let's move on to our next segment, because we got a couple, maybe not so sleepy guys anymore. We've talked about a couple of these guys already because they're the talk of the town. So Schultzy, let's bring up the diagram here and let Pete talk about his under the radar guy that might pop at the combine, and a riser here that we should have our eyes on.
Yeah. So love the graphic, first of all. Really, really sweet graphic. For me, Kevin Coleman Jr. is one of them. He started to get a little bit of talk down at Mobile. Wish I could have been there. But I mean, a lot of people started to just kind of fall in love with him a little bit, but it hasn't really reflected that way when I look at fast draft origins. I mean, I've gotten him relative, those drafts are eight teams. So, but relatively, if you get a guy in like the fourth round, it's kind of like late third, early third, kind of whatever. But I don't really see Kevin Coleman getting hype enough where I see in mock drafts, like I've been able to get him in the third round. I don't really see him going in the second at all. And I don't know, when we talk about these guys that are maybe high upside, low floor, he kind of reminds me of it, right? I mean, the worry is this guy, he's small. I've seen listings of him, and I don't know what I don't know what he weighed in at the combine, but I think projected wise, he's projected to be like around 180, which is pretty small in terms of the size. He's 5'11", but he's super twitchy, right? And I think he'll go into the combine and show off that twitchiness. And I think he'll run a good and fast 40-yard dash. People will start kind of talking about him. The worry that I have is, like, you look at him and maybe he becomes like a like a Taj Washington, right? A gadgety guy, right? He really only played in the slot. Like that was his big that's pretty much where he was aligned. And when you look at the data, or at least when you look at the numbers don't back up, right? Maybe spending high draft capital on him. So when we talk about the return on investment, this is a guy that I'm targeting because I do think he has that big playability. You look at, he only had one touchdown last year. He did hop around. He went to 3 different teams. He played at 2 SEC teams, but finding your footing can be a little bit difficult when you're changing systems like that. But the fact that he was able to move from ACC to then SEC and then SEC and stay in the SEC showed me that he belonged, and he was able to win in the slot. And so I think he's a player that I don't believe will get into that second round. And so I'm excited to target him. I typically don't target wide receivers very late. I know people will point to Puka Nacua. It's just, I typically like to take shots on the running backs later and the wide receivers higher, just because running backs, once you start getting later on wide receivers, there's a lot of them out there and it's hard to command a target share, right? Running backs, you don't have to be on the field and then all of a sudden an injury happens and then you can become the guy. So I typically like to target running backs a little bit later, and tight ends. Those are my 2 positions I like most. But I think Coleman is a guy that I think will surprise people and continue to generate buzz. And I think the NFL is going to like him. If they can get past, because look, the NFL is moving towards being more comfortable with these smaller guys. It's just a matter of, can he win against the more physical corners, especially in the slot? And so that's something that we'll have to see. But he's a guy I'm going to be willing to probably take a gamble on.
Chev, what do you got to say about Kevin Coleman?
So here's the thing with Kevin Coleman. He jumps off the tape. Like it is aggressive, right? Like he's a guy that you can. So I watched him play Alabama. I watched a couple of broadcast games on Mizzou. Like I watched him against Arkansas because I live here, and I watched him against Alabama. And against Alabama, he jumped off the tape. Like he was constantly making plays. And Alabama's got a few guys that are going to play on Sundays in the secondary. Like they might not still be Nick Saban's Bama, but they're still really, really good. So, like you said, there's a little concern with his ability to play, to line up outside. That does concern me. If he's just a slot only guy, is he Malik Washington? Just kind of, does he end up getting buried, on a depth chart with minimal usage for the first couple of years? Like we know that this is a good player. It's just like you said. It's like, what's the role going to be? I think for a lot of people, he's going to enter the national consciousness. He's going to enter the national consciousness after the combine because he either tears it up or he does really poorly. But I don't see him doing really poorly because you can see he's just a really good football player. So I love the shout. I was a little butthurt that you put that in there, Pete. I'm not going to lie to you.
And the other thing I didn't mention with him is he's going to test probably pretty fast, but he's not a one-trick pony. He can snap off his routes, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah.
That's something that makes me think, okay, like he is a route runner, right? Where you worry about some of these fast guys, they become gadgety, which is probably more what Washington is when we talk about him over in Miami, where he doesn't need to be this how do you say it? Kind of like what everybody, a gadgety. He doesn't have to be that gadgety player. But the biggest thing is he's going to probably be that off the line guy. He's never going to be the X, which is understandable. But I also think, look, the slot position, people think that, look, the X is, everyone thinks, oh, the X, the prototypical receiver, that's what we want. And I love X receivers. I love them, right? But to be completely honest with you, we've seen so much success fantasy-wise from these guys that play in the slot as well. And so there is a path for the success there.
Can I get in there? Because like he kind of gives me that Tank Dell vibes a little bit, with the quickness. right off the line there. And he's got to land in a team that's going to utilize him in that way. Like a lot of these teams are now moving towards 12, 13 personnel where the tight ends are playing a lot more on the field, and it's eliminating that slot receiver quite a bit. So the snap shares for these slot guys are kind of fading now quite a bit. And we've seen that JJ and Matt Harmon, they broke that down quite great on per reception perception this last week, you know, and projecting this kind of demise of this solely slot guy. So unless he's on a team that's going to play less of that 13, 12 personnel, I'm going to be worried about that demographic moving forward. But I mean, if he gets a Tank Dell role in an offense that's going to highlight, you know, the slot receiver, because he's so fast on the line, he gets that separation, and yeah, it's going to be a variable where he lands. So great sleeper pick here, because he's going to be someone that's going to definitely show out at the combine and be on people's radars.
Well, and I honestly too, I don't think it's tough because he played so dominantly in the slot that, you know, you sit there and say, can he? He's obviously not gonna be able to play the X, but he could be that offline. I think where he doesn't have to be moved around motion. He can, but I don't think that's gonna be what he has to be. And so if he can, you're not going to get pressed if you're not on the line nearly as much. So you're going to get that free release. It's really more about like, can he hold up, and is he that good from a route running standpoint that it justifies him being out there at his size, right? And Tank Dell, I think, is a great comp there as well.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to the next guy, and it's you, Schultzy, or no, it's Schultzy. Who's your player?
All right, it's going to be real quick. Aaron Anderson over here at LSU. I guess somewhat of a similar profile here to Kevin Coleman. And Chev just talked about this guy a couple weeks ago, heading into the Senior Bowl. And based on like what we talked about him there, I felt like he was a good fit as a, you know, like pre-combine sleeper. We brought him up here and we talked about, hey, we've ran into a lot of guys in the past who have this, you know, these kind of track guys who have caught on, played college football and had some success, go blow up the combine, or even if they're not combine guys, whatever, just like that, having that speed, the track speed, the track background is a ticket in already. They just don't have football chops. They're not football players, and it's very apparent when they get to the NFL, and people still fall for it. But Chev talked about Aaron Anderson, and then we got talking, and we bring up the fact that, hey, this is a guy who's got that background in track and has the speed and all that, but hey, this guy actually knows how to play football, and so here we go. We might be cooking with gas here, right? I mean, I'm a little confused as to why, like, you look at most people's rankings and stuff, like what 4th, 5th round rookie pick, but I'm expecting him to go absolutely light up the combine, because that's pretty much his firstborn sport is the combine, right? I mean, this is exactly track and field. He's going to go do the thing he's already really, really good at. He's going to light it up, and I think we're going to be talking about him as at least a 3rd round pick come around, you know, come rookie draft season. Solid. I mean, he's a good route runner. He can catch the ball well. The biggest knock here is not a great blocker, but he's a small dude. He's what, 5'9", I think. Yeah. But he's so explosive. He's so, I mean, just like you talked about with Coleman, like out of the breaks, like he can create separation for himself coming out of breaks. Like I said, this is a dude who's got legit track skill and football chops. I think the combine is gonna shoot him up.
Anderson is I think you said a perfect word. This is the kind of situation that he would thrive in with the combine. I mean, there's a chance he runs a 4.35. It wouldn't shock me, right, if he goes out there and does something like that. He is a player that I'm curious what NFL teams are going to see in him, because you look at his tools and he has exceptional tools, right? But it's still a little bit raw, right? The route tree I think is a little limited. It's a lot of short area stuff with him, and so it's going to depend on can he. So we talked a little bit about it before, but with these players, do they get with the right coaching staffs? Right. This is a guy that is from LSU, so you have a little concern when you say, "Man, if he couldn't develop his route tree, is it because they didn't have time to try to train him up on it, or could he not get the hang of it?" Right. And so you start to sit there and say, okay, when we try to project, like, what could he be? Situation's going to matter for him, because is he going to be a slot dependent player? And we kind of talked about that before. And if he is, I think that's okay. But we talk about these bigger, a lot of teams are running the football more. And so if you are going to be out there in the slot, it does obviously help. Is he a willing blocker? I can't say whether he is or isn't. But that would probably be pretty important. But I just think overall, with a guy like him, if a team falls in love with the tools and is willing to say, hey, we don't need this guy to be a contributor year one. We can develop him and not throw him out there, because this guy is extremely fast. He played at LSU and stuck there. So it's not like he was at some small school. I mean, sure, in 2025, he only ended up with 398 yards, but he was there for 3 years. And this is a guy that you said track and field was his number one sport. I wasn't even aware of that. But so I think it's really ultimately, is he gonna find a coaching staff that's gonna be willing to be patient with him? I don't think that I think it's a beautiful price if you love the situation he lands in, and you still believe in the talent, because you might not need that on your. It's a perfect taxi squad player where he might. I mean, and if he gives you anything year one, you're like, this is gravy, right? But you might fall in love with him just because the tools are there. The tools are there for a wide receiver. It's just a matter of, are they going to give him enough time to polish things up a little bit?
Love it. All right, Chev, you got a player you want to spotlight here? I know you had two on there, but one didn't get invited, and that's okay. So let's talk about.
I'm still going to talk about him though.
Do it.
It's going to be
tap it.
Yeah, it's going to be Reggie Virgil, wide receiver at Texas Tech. So look, I saw a rep at the Senior Bowl where his acceleration on a go ball just made me stand up out of my wheelchair. And when I saw it, I was like, hey, I got to go learn more about this guy. It's not that it's statistically overwhelming. He was only 700 yards this past year. I believe 840 yards at Miami of Ohio the year before. He did really well in terms of contested catches. So I think this guy's going to run a pretty decent 40. And I think that he's going to raise his profile some, and he's going to be one of the guys. I know Pete doesn't like targeting late round wide receivers, but this is a guy that could go to a situation and play a role pretty immediatch if he is allowed, like you said with Aaron Anderson earlier, if he's allowed to, if a coach and coaching staff are willing to bring him along slowly, and trust him. So 17 touchdowns the last 2 years. Like, this is, 11 contested catches this past year. I really, after going back and watching a little bit of the Miami of Ohio stuff, I'm like, there's more here than what I saw at Texas Tech. So really excited. I know a lot of people are excited about Caleb Douglas, but I really want to see what he does. And then the other guy didn't get invited to the combine. He's real life Ladarius Shadarius, Mike. Did you know that?
Yeah, Ladarius Shadarius.
I like how you put none of his stats up here. That's awesome. But he averaged 26 yards a catch this year as a tight end. He's 6'3", he's 240 pounds. He played 2 years at Maine, then transferred to Montana State, then he transferred to Arkansas. Like I said, 26 yards per reception. And these aren't just like, I don't know how many times you can blow a coverage on a guy, but I mean, it tracks. So he's moving. So I'm really anxious to see what he does at the Arkansas Pro Day.
Isn't it Arkansas? Didn't we solidify that last week on the show?
Listen, it's Arkansas.
Hey, if you blow a coverage on a guy, I guess you can say Arkansas.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. It's
All right,
only
Pete, you
our
got anything
kings
to
who
say
don't
about
live
those
here.
two guys? You got any comments on these two guys? You know anything about them? Like, what's your take on both these guys?
Yeah, I know Virgil. I can't. I'd be lying if I told you who Rohan Jones was. So I apologize, Chev. With
Oh, brother, don't you worry.
but I like
You're
I
gonna
like
get real
the deep,
familiar.
I like the deep pull. I like the deep pull right there.
I
Virgil,
live here, so it's fine.
yeah, hometown kid. I like that.
And he's the king of the deep pull. So
There you go. I like Virgil. You know, the yards per route run, I think I'm looking at it now, 12.4, I believe, which is really, really nice. I mean, when we talk about sticky stats and what we're looking for at the wide receiver and in fantasy, yards per route run feels like it's become a common talked about, like this is one of the more important data points. And Mike, I'm sure as a data guy, you might have some thoughts there, but 6'3", 190. You'd like for him to be a little bit thicker at that size, right? How is he gonna? Is he going to be that X, right? And if he is at 190, is he physical enough to kind of get off the press, right? That's really the biggest thing from a fantasy perspective, though. I mean, this is a guy that's got really strong hands, and you can expect him, you know. I kind of think of like almost like a poor man's Denzel Boston in a sense, where it's like he's got really, really strong hands. So similar in that regard. How much does it translate for fantasy? I feel like with these X guys, it's man, you have to be really, really good, I think, for it to translate from a fantasy perspective. But I don't mind taking a gamble because I mean, you're talking about a guy that's he's going to be really fast. He's got the size. He was able to win contested catches, so he's got strong hands. It's just a matter of beating the press and getting open quick enough in his routes at the next level. And can he develop that part of his game? And he's a willing blocker, which I think is good to see too. I wouldn't say he's the best, but he's still willing to block.
from what I can see, he gives me some Jacoby Lane vibes a little bit, just a slighter frame, the same size, a little bit of that touchdown variance in the red zone here. Could be an interesting take. I'm not sure. Chev, what do you got?
Guys, he's the same size as Jacoby Lane and Cornell Tate. What are we doing?
There you go.
Well, here's it. No, but the thing is, Tate, I'm more when I watch Tate though, he can get off the press very well.
Oh yeah.
That's
I mean,
the
take my wide
difference
receiver one.
Yeah, I'm not worried. If my worry is that Virgil getting off the press wasn't that great, and he's a little lanky.
Yeah,
Tate has no. I don't have concerns there with Tate.
No, he does. I mean, like the play strength's a valid thing, but like the frame is I like this is my type of guy, so I felt like I had to defend him with my life.
There you go. Yeah, I love it. All right, so I'll get into my guy, but I mean, I was waffling because he's steaming up quite a bit, and I originally had Ty Montgomery on the show sheet as my pre-combine sleeper, but he didn't get invited, and then I was kind of waffling between Mike Washington and Omar Cooper, and they're less than sleepers than Chev's guys, but I'm going to talk about Mike Washington. We talked about him a little bit already, but I mean, obviously the combine made the difference. The Senior Bowl made the difference for him. That was a turning point. What a showcase he was. Power, blend, speed, burst. That speed, didn't he clock in at 21 miles per hour on GPS? That's incredible speed for a guy of that size. So, we talked about him already in depth here with Chev's question earlier in the segment, but a couple of things that maybe he'd be his weakness for me is that ball security, some lateral agility. That receiving ceiling may not be there yet, but we'll see what happens here at the next stage, because all that other stuff, physical finisher, explosive efficiency, that downhill decisiveness makes him a guy that I'm going to be really keeping my eye on here at the combine, as a guy that if he could really test well. I mean, we mentioned the 40-yard dash as a metric that a lot of running backs we really don't put a whole lot of investment in here. This is a guy I'm going to be looking at just because of his size, and I think a lot of teams will be looking at Mike Washington in that range. So maybe you can enhance that a little bit more there, Pete. Obviously, we talked about him in depth, but anything else to add about Mike?
Yeah, you bring up the receiving stuff, and I think that's one of the biggest pieces of his game that I felt like a little to be desired, right? He catches the ball fluidly out of the backfield and gets upfield quickly, I thought, but it was really more of the route tree. It was really a lot of check downs, swing routes, right? It wasn't anything complex, not a bunch of Texas routes or nothing super complex. And look, it's a running back, so I'm not expecting him to be able to line up in the slot and go run a comeback, or you wouldn't run that out of the slot, but you get it. But with him, I think that the mobile really opened, or at least gave me even an extra step of juice on him, because there were some really, really good coverage linebackers down at mobile, and he was beating a lot of them in the receiver drills. So I was really impressed with that. And so I'm interested to get a second look at him in those kind of those drills there where he's catching the ball and running some routes down there in the combine. And the 40-yard dash, you bring a good point. I mean, look, when you're 6'2", 228 pounds, right? I get guys aren't running a straight line 40 yards, but it's impressive. Not many guys should be able to run a sub, 4.5 40-yard dash at 6'2", 228 pounds. So I'm excited with Mike. I feel like I almost feel like I can't say a bad thing about him. The ball security is definitely valid. I think it's really the ball security, and he could be a little bit more fluid in his lateralness going side to side. But overall, I'm super excited about him.
Got one question here about him then. What would be the cake landing spot for him if you saw him go somewhere? Where would you love to see him go that would just make him pull up to your, running back 3?
Wow. That's a hard one. I mean, I'd love him in Denver, but I already have RJ Harvey. I'm a Broncos fan, so I'd be pretty. I know you're a Chiefs fan. Honestly, KC would be fun too, with Eric Bieniemy going back there.
Yeah.
I think it would be KC would be really nice. Denver, I don't sit there and say that I believe Denver can develop running backs, but I just know that there's so many points able to go to the running back position in that offense because of how Sean uses them. But with Eric Bieniemy and the Chiefs, there's such a need. And honestly, I know I've seen people think they're going to spend up on the running back early in the draft or shell out all this money. I think they'll get a depth guy, but honestly, like a guy like Mike Washington would be great to learn under Bieniemy, right? Kind of refine his game a little bit too, because look, he was only 1 year in the SEC, but the beautiful thing is we saw him step up in the SEC and play well, which confirmed my concerns. I mean, he had his best year of his college career in the SEC. So I think KC would be really fun too. I can't say that. I don't know. It's always hard for me to kind of be like, yeah, he's going to be the best fit here, but I'm trying to focus more on the coaches and who can develop well. And I know Eric Bieniemy they're trying to get this running game right in Kansas City because it's been terrible the last 2 years. And Mahomes coming off the injury, damn well they're going to need to invest in that running game. And so I think it'd be a lot of fun having him land there. And honestly, people would love it. You talk about his stock going up. I mean, if he went to Kansas City, I can't imagine his stock going any higher in many other places too.
Dallas.
All right, Coach. Finish us off with your guy, buddy.
Yeah, I'll finish you off, guys. All right, you got it. DeMarco Murray, running back coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. Funny enough, my one player comp that I can think of for Mike Washington is DeMarco Murray, who just got hired with the Chiefs. So this is just very exciting for me because I'm like, oh my God, is this something that's crystallizing? So when Pete says Chiefs, I'm just like, woo, antennas. I got to put it out there into the universe. Now let's talk about universe. Devon Achane sickness. Once you get bit, if you were on the train rookie season, you just know that feeling. You want to chase that high forever, right? Claiborne, 5'10", 195. Achane, 5'9", 190. So the diminutive size, similar frame. And you fiend for this every single year. You look for that profile. And it's cheap. And it's not always better. It's not always the same either. But when it hits, it pays off tremendously. round 5, early day 3 draft capital for Claiborne. We're seeing early round 3 in rookie mocks, fast draft origins where you are, Pete. 26 overall. So we're getting some steam up where people put their nuts on the table and they pay up a little bit. You get a little money going and people start letting it fly. 193 RB262 in fast draft, round 19 ADP. Only drafted on fast draft in the Rabbit, 3.3% rostership. So there's edge, advantage there, leverage. Underdog, round 18 ADP in the little boards, in the big boards. So I love him. He gets to the edge, can take it to the house. He's speedy. We immediately get hyped for him. And he's a player who, in this draft class, we talk about Mike Washington moving up. This is one of those lightning running backs who, paired in the right place, can absolutely make people go nuts and be an auto click in round 3, maybe into round 2 of your rookie drafts. And of course, in best ball, I'm going to want to be obese on a player like this. Pete, am I levitating too much in the cement aisle with Claiborne? Or do you see him as somebody, because the need for speed just hits at the combine and it really just delivers, especially for running backs. Do you see him hitting at the combine, and how would the market hysteria hit?
Yeah, Claiborne was tough because initially when I was going through film with the running backs, there wasn't a lot of tape I could get on him at first. And then I kind of moved off of him and I kind of went to other players and I never really circled back. I watched about one game of him, so I can't say with conviction that I have a strong feeling on him as a player, to be completely honest with you. I would say from the game that I did watch, I did love his ability to get north and south. He's not like a guy that's going to dance in the backfield. I think a lot of that has to do, just taking a look here, zone versus gap. He ran 280 gap scheme runs and then 272 zone. So he's a guy that typically can get north and south. That's why he, in a gap scheme, that's usually what you see. And when you talk about a guy that can get downhill, that's the biggest thing I noticed with him. He doesn't waste a lot of time, not a lot of extra steps or wasted movement. So yeah, I mean, I'm totally cool grabbing him. I've got some decent shares. I think I have close to about 15% of him. Just because, especially in fast draft, I just pound running backs at the end there because of the value. So I can't really say with conviction I have a strong opinion on him, but he is somebody that Chev put me onto, and I wish I could have watched more at the time, but I just didn't really circle back on him. But yeah, I mean, if you love him, I love him. I trust your belief, but he's somebody I got to watch a little more on. So,
hey, don't call me a moron.
Love it. That's great. All right, boys. What a great show. That's going to do it for us today on the Dynasty Pulse. Huge thank you to Pete Nova for coming on and absolutely raising the IQ of this room. So if you're not already following his work at Player Profile, do so right away. Fix that immediately. 94% hit rate on DST streamers. It isn't just luck. It's the process that brings him here, and that's why he wins in Dynasty. Pete, tell everybody what you're doing right now and, send us off.
Well, it was a good show, folks. I really appreciate if you've lasted this long listening to me. You're probably a little crazy, but we're all a little bit crazy to be playing this game and be this interested in fantasy football on February 12th. But that's kind of where we are. But yeah, you can find me at Player Profiler. You can find me on Twitter at Supernova38. I have some stuff I'm trying to work on the side. So I'm waiting to clear a couple of hurdles and get through a couple things. So I'm laying the groundwork and foundation for bigger things ahead. So excited for those things, and I got a lot cooking on Fast Draft as well. So thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun, and hope to be back sometime soon.
Yeah, man, you've been an awesome guest. You were raising our IQ, like I mentioned. So, guys and girls, and if we head into the combine season, remember this: don't fall in love with the stopwatch. Don't panic over the 3-cone, and don't torture rookie picks because someone ran fast in compression shorts. Use the data, use the film, trust the process, and stay ahead of the market. From Schultzy, Chev, myself, and Coach, we all hope you win from FSAN. We'll see you next time, folks, on the Dynasty Pulse. Thanks, Pete, for joining us. Peace out.